So this is the audio test for my 2025 Honda CRF450RL review. Let's get it fired. So I'm going to answer one question right off the bat, and that is the most salient question, which is that you see so many people buy these bikes and put thousands of dollars in accessories on them, and then sell them after just a few years, you know, losing $4,000 or $5,000 or $6,000 in combination of depreciation and aftermarket parts. So why is that? Well, bottom line up front, I'll tell you exactly why it is. Off-road, nothing short of a dirt bike on knobby dirt bike tires is going to behave like a dirt bike. So this bike, even though it's dirt bike derived, on street tires, it's just not going to act like a dirt bike. And on road, it has issues. So around town, for example, with the catalytic converter and the exhaust to make it street legal, this thing gets so hot that if I'm not careful, I will literally burn holes in my clothing. And on the freeway, you know, if you're doing 80, 85 miles per hour, this engine is revving to 9,700 plus RPM, and with that big 450cc piston, that's going to put a lot of vibrations into the bike. So after an hour, your hands are going to be numb, feeling nothing but, you know, pins and needles. And without any sort of wind protection, you know, 80, 85, you're getting 26, 27 miles per gallon. So with that 2-gallon gas tank, your practical freeway range is about 55 miles per miles range. So it's not a good touring bike. And of course, if you're doing 80 plus, you got that wind constantly trying to rip you off the bike. So it's not as good as a dirt bike off-road. Around town, you got heat issues, and on the freeway, it's just miserable. So what most of the owners actually do is split the bike into two. They will buy an enduro dirt bike for the off-road riding, and they will buy a adventure bike or a touring bike for the on-road riding. But why did I get it? Simple answer is that there's nothing else that does all of those as well as this does. Right? Off-road, yeah, it's got street tires, but you know, it weighs so little, it's less than 300 pounds, and it's got such high-spec suspension, and it's got that motocross-derived engine for the instant response, and it just performs way better off-road than any of the bigger adventure bikes or touring bikes. And around town, with that high-spec suspension and the lightweight, it is just like a supermoto. It's a dream, right? And with the torque of that motocross-derived engine, you know, you just twist the throttle and you shoot into a gap in traffic. Whereas with a dirt bike, with a sport bike, you know, you might have to clutch it and drop a gear and rev the engine up and slip the clutch to shoot into that gap. Whereas with this one, you know, you can just shoot into that gap. And on the freeway, yeah, it's a miserable experience, but it's a Honda. It'll do it, right? You don't think that an engine revving to 10,000 RPM can do it for hours and hours and hours and not care. But it's a Honda. You might be miserable, but the bike isn't. So, yeah, there's really nothing else out of Japan that performs as well as this thing in all of those conditions. And I've had KTMs, and they are great bikes, especially off-road. But the KTMs do break down a lot, and when they do break, parts are difficult to find and they're expensive, so your KTMs spend a lot of time not being ridden, whereas this is a Honda. It just runs. So I do like the bike. It's certainly a compromise bike, but with those compromises in mind, just understand it'll do everything. I will also mention that I did have to put a lot of money into this bike right off the bat, about $2,000 to make it rideable. So with the stock engine control computer, it's like an on-off switch. And when you got a powerful motocross engine, you know, being controlled with essentially an on-off switch, it is just so exhausting to try to ride smoothly on the road. So I had to spend $1,100 on an Athena Get SX1 ECU and Wi-Fi control module, as well as this handlebar controller so I can switch maps. And the motocross seat is also pretty painful on the freeway. Like, you ride for an hour on that, and you understand why the CIA has replaced waterboarding with stress positions. And of course, due to the lack of range, I had to get some way of carrying more fuel. So for me, that was getting a rack from Jeff Nash, and then getting some Rotopacks to carry fuel. So $1,100 for the ECU, $350 for the seat concept seat, a couple $100 for the rack, and maybe $150 or so for the Rotopacks and all the other accessories. So we're about $2,000 when you factor in taxes to get this bike rideable. So it is cheaper than the KTMs, the European competition, but by the time you invest the money that's needed, it's not really cheaper anymore. But do I like it? Absolutely. Right. It is just such a fun bike to ride. It just does everything around town, on the freeway, off-road. Yeah, there's other bikes that do it better, but there's nothing that does all of it as well as this bike does. So that's why I chose the Honda CRF450RL. Thanks for watching.